Hi, welcome to AmateurLogic.TV, episode 12. I'm George.
And I'm Jim.
And I'm Tommy.
And boy, we've got a good episode for you today.
Yes, we do.
I think it's the best show so far this year.
You think so?
I really do, yeah.
Best one this year? I can't argue with that.
It could be.
Well, you know, Tommy was here over the holidays, and he and I got together out on the bench, and we did a little experimenting with the Basic Stamp.
Oh.
We had a couple of requests, so we went ahead and did it.
Embedded microcontrollers.
Yeah.
Boy, you guys are getting knee deep.
Well, you know, you're playing with them too. You just didn't make it, so.
Oh, yes, go ahead and get geeky.
Yeah, how'd you like seeing Mississippi again, Tommy, after being gone a few months?
I felt pretty good to be back home. I've been gone for about 8 months now, and it was really nice to come back and visit, but it also felt kind of good to get back home where all my stuff is, too, so.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Kind of torn.
He's calling Missouri home now.
Yeah.
Look out.
Home is where your stuff is, man.
George, what all have we got coming up this
Well,
episode?
of course, we've got this good segment on the Basic Stamp. Tommy's got a photo tip, another photo tip segment for us. Imagine that.
Imagine that.
He's been pretty consistent on and good about having one for us every month. What's it going to be about this month, Tommy?
Well, I had a request this month for about how to use the dodge and burn tools in Photoshop, so I'm going to show a little bit about that stuff.
That'll be a new topic for me. I have no idea
Me
what
too.
he's talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I kind of do, but I've never used them.
Yeah. Jim, what have you got for us in the network tools?
Network tools, we're going to talk about 2 free network tools that everyone has already installed on their computer.
What?
Free, man, the price is right.
That's right, that's a magic word.
Yeah. You got my attention.
Yeah. And I was playing around the junk box the other day, and I needed something to come up with for a segment this time, and I knew we were going to have this Basic Stamp, and that was going to be a pretty long segment, and I'd claim at least half of that for mine. So I threw together a little something here on a topic that, well...
We kind of got on to George last time about doing his 1-minute segment on the
Yeah.
on the telephone,
So
tin cans in a string.
it's probably 3 minutes this time.
We did just
Went
tell him.
all out, huh?
We did just tell him to make it longer. We didn't specify how much longer.
Yeah, I guess we're going to have to put a time limit on it next time.
Yeah.
So here's a tip from the junk box. Let me start by saying that today's tip from the bench was stolen from another IPTV show. I don't remember who, or I'd give them credit for this, but I saw it about a year ago, and it's a neat little tip, and I thought that I had everything I needed to do it with, that you might want to see it. You remember these? Back in the days when we had 9-volt transistor radios and everything ran off a 9-volt battery, and the wires broke off of these real bad, and you could buy these at Radio Shack in a pack of 10, I don't know, $1 or $2. They weren't much. I don't know if they even sell them anymore. The problem was that they're not very good. Same with most snaps that come in a lot of gear. They're not very good. If you got it on a battery, look at this. Look at all that slack. Now, that's not going to make a very good connection. So, fortunately, there's a good answer for that. Fortunately, there's a good answer for that. And I just happen to have a 9-volt battery here that's completely discharged. Otherwise, I wouldn't try this on a brand new battery. And let me say, do not try this at home, particularly if you don't know what you're doing. But since a lot of our audience is amateur radio operators, how can I tell you not to open a 9-volt battery? You probably have done things a lot more dangerous. But if you decide to do this, make sure you wear the proper eyewear and whatever else you need to protect yourself from the acid such that's in this battery. And remember that it could explode. So that's another reason I'm working with one that's already discharged. Now to open this battery, I'm going to use an old pair of diagonal wire cutters that are already very gapped up, and I don't care anything about them. Now, notice in this ever-ready battery, it just fell right out. There we go. That's the piece that we need. So all we need to do is solder or tin these two little spots back here, and then connect a piece of wire to it. I've already tinned my wire, so basically all I've got to do is lay it on here. Now, which wire goes where? Well, if we flip it over and look on this ever-ready battery, it just happens to be marked positive and negative. But that's backwards, because you're wanting to mate with these. So the one that's marked negative, which is the female one here, that's the one that gets the red wire. You could cover this up with hot glue or another type of insulating material, just so that it doesn't short out. You might want to take it and bend it so your wires are coming both out of the same end. And there you go, a good heavy-duty 9-volt battery stamp. This is much stronger than you're going to find in probably almost anything. Now, what's left in that battery? Well, let's take a look. A lot of little loose cells. Now, this will be different in different brands of batteries, but this one was nothing more than a tin can with a lot of individual cells in there that were being connected together with these little strips. You know, that looks awful familiar. Would this work as a substitute for a AAA? Not quite. Almost, though. With a little convincing, you could use this in an emergency. Anyway, that's what you can do with a 9-volt battery that has no life left in it.
Well, George, I have to say, I didn't think it was going to be too much, a 3-minute jump box trick, but I really am impressed. I like that one. Well, I can actually use that too.
You know, it's not really my trick. Somebody else did it. I just can't remember who.
You know what? It's actually pretty handy, though, because I actually could have used one for my 9-volt adapter for this. When I put my stamp together, and it was an evening, and I didn't have a 9-volt supply or a battery clip, and that would have been a pretty handy little trick.
Yeah, well, now you'll know how to do it next time that happens, I guess. Next stamp I put together.
That's right.
Speaking of building things, Tommy's got an email from one of our friends in Germany.
This is from Aaron. It says, "Thanks for the great show, guys. I love to watch. The soldering tips were exactly what I needed for my project. See the picture, and yes, I want a robotic episode."
Yeah, he made this nice looking blinking light display here. And he sent us a little video. Let's roll that clip.
Yeah, that's a pretty awesome project.
Man, that was a cool project, wasn't it, Jim?
Well, I tell you what, the guy from Germany, what's his name? Aaron? He's got it going on.
Yeah. Yeah, he put a lot of work into that. That's a pretty awesome project.
Yeah.
Yep.
Speaking of projects, you know, we've done several episodes where we touched a little bit on the cantenna.
Yep.
And it seems like an episode or two back, you know, we answered a viewer question on there about making a cantenna big enough. I think it was for 2 meters. That's what he was wanting.
Oh, yeah. Something about the rear end of a truck.
Yeah, we took a couple of guesses.
Propane.
Yeah.
Tell me, what was it?
Yeah, about cutting the end off a tanker truck and using it for the can.
Well, somebody thought about it a little better than we did. Mike, KL7R from the Solder Smoke podcast,
yeah.
Our friend over in London, said, well, he sent us a link to turningpoint.net. That's the same site that, you know, we got our plans for. I didn't revisit it, but apparently he went back and looked, and he says it looks like it's going to take a 48-inch diameter drum with an 18-inch probe, and that would do the trick.
Oh, that makes sense. 48-inch.
Wow.
So he says, judging by your hand on the propane torch, Jim, in your lab, he says, I don't think I'd recommend it.
He obviously saw the parts recovery.
Oh,
segment.
yes, he did. We'll have a little more on that later.
That's funny. That's good advice.
That's right. Well, let me make amends. Let me let me show you what I came up with on Network Tools, and maybe I can get back in good graces.
No fire involved in this one.
No fire involved in this one at all. Hello, and welcome to AmateurLogic.TV's Networking Tools. You know, they say the best things in life are free sometimes. Kind of like a nice cup of coffee being at the workbench. And kind of like today's Networking Tools segment, we're going to talk about 2 free networking tools that everybody already has on their computer. That is, if you have an operating system by Microsoft or Linux or Mac OS X, Sun OS, it doesn't matter. If your computer has networking capabilities, odds are you'll have these 2 free tools installed on your computer. And that alone should tell you just how important these 2 free tools are. Let's take a look. Both tools are accessed from the command line. So first bring up your command prompt utility, CMD. And then the first tool we'll take a look at is called Ping. Type PING followed by the name or TCP IP address of what you'd like to ping. We're going to use www.yahoo.com. Press enter. Just like in the submarine world, where a sound is sent out and then the sender listens for an echo, Ping sends out a packet known as an echo request and listens for a return packet called an echo reply. Here's a sniff showing the previous ping. Here are all 8 packets, the 4 we sent and the 4 replies. Back to our ping. At its most basic level, Ping is a tool used to troubleshoot network connectivity. For example, number 1, you can learn the IP address of your target, as seen here. If you don't get this first line, that could indicate name resolution problems or problems with your server perhaps talking to your DNS servers. Number 3, you can see the amount of time in milliseconds that the entire round trip takes, and you can see that for each individual echo request and echo reply. Finally, Ping concludes by presenting you with some statistics about packet loss and round trip times. These are very informational and will tell you if any packets have been lost and give you the minimum, maximum, and average times of your entire ping. But Ping has more tricks up his sleeve. Let's take a look at all its options. Here's an often used option by network admins, the -T. This causes Ping to continuously ping until stopped by a Control-C key combination. This has a lot of uses, including real-time observations of whether or not your host, such as a server you might be monitoring, is still alive and still operating, or at least still answering to TCP/IP requests. And so here we will press our Control-C. You can see from looking at the statistics that we had no data loss. What else has Ping got up his sleeve? Well, here's another -L. This allows you to specify the size that you would like the data payload in the ping packet to be. In other words, you're setting the size of the overall ping packet to be sent. We'll use 1536, the maximum size of a packet, before it is fragmented, and we'll ping www.yahoo.com again. And notice, we get our normal 4 replies, but look at the times this time as compared to our earlier ping. These times are much greater. The minimum, maximum, and average are all above 80 milliseconds. This is highly useful when you're troubleshooting network connectivity issues. This will reveal network congestion sometimes where a regular ping won't. Bigger packets are often blocked or slowed due to fragmentation or QoS or numerous other causes. Moving on, the second tool is called traceroute, and it's spelled T-R-A-C-E-R-T. So type that in, followed by the name of what you want to trace the route to, or a TCP IP address. Press enter. Just like placing your finger on a road map and moving it along the route to your destination, traceroute travels along the network wires, recording its path along the way and printing it back on your screen. Traceroute is another low-level diagnostic network troubleshooting tool. Here are some of its uses. Number one, you can literally see how many hops your packets have to make before arriving at their destination. Here, my router is the first hop. Then we jump onto Bell South's network, my ISP. We travel along the wires on Bell South's network until we get to Yahoo's network. And then, finally, onto our destination, just one of the many Yahoo servers. And you see our original IP address that we got when we did our ping. Number two, you can see the times for each individual hop. This is important, highly informational, and very useful if you're troubleshooting network connectivity and you want to look at any one particular network node. If you're not interested in all the pretty name resolution, you can do a -D, which allows traceroute to work really fast and bypass resolving IP addresses to host names. In other words, you drop name resolution. Now let's have a look at those times to each particular node along our traceroute. You can see all the times in this particular traceroute are just about the same. Note too how traceroute sends back 3 times to each destination or each hop. That's because just one might not be representative of the link between you and that node. In other words, one might be high while the other 2 is an average representative sample. Highly informational, very useful when troubleshooting network connectivity slowdowns. You might be able to notice where one server or one hop along the way is taking an inordinate amount of time. Now these times are normal for U.S. domestic access. But let's take a look at one that goes overseas. www.ripe.net is one of the regional internet registries. This one in Europe just happens to be in Amsterdam. And here's our trace route. You can see our path takes us along the Bell South network, again, my ISP, and we get all the way to Dallas on Level 3's network, and then we make the hop to Amsterdam. Look at these times. All of a sudden we go from 20s and 30s and round trip times to 150 plus. But that's normal access times to Europe. This trace route was done about 10 a.m. Central Standard Time on a Friday morning, which would make it just about close of business for Amsterdam. So these are normal network traversal times for most European assets. So there, now you have 2 free network tools that you know about and can add to your repertoire. So that wraps up this networking tools segment. Hope you enjoyed it. If you can think of something you'd really like to see us cover on networking tools, feel free to drop me a line. My email address is jimmy@AmateurLogic.TV.
You know, Jim, I was going to write you an email back about that trace route, but my spell checker kept throwing it out.
Well, that's right. The entire rest of the computing world does spell that out completely, as in trace route. Microsoft is not doing a special code on theirs or anything. It's just, yeah, I think that stems back to the old 8.3 DOS days, so it's Trace RT.
Cool. You know, talking about communications and such, have either one of you guys ever heard of a guy named Fessenden? Familiar with that name?
Oh, I can't say that I have.
The name does sound familiar, but I can't pull out what it might have been.
Well, as good radio amateurs, you should both be ashamed of yourselves. Of course, I'll have to admit...
Wait a minute.
I didn't know who he was either.
Is he the guy that came up with the amateur code?
No.
As in the code, not CW code, but the code like the creed.
No.
No. All right.
Our friend Bill, Wild Bill, N5YCK,
Bill
sent me a little email back just a couple of days before Christmas, and this link from the BBC that I suggest everyone go check out on Fessenden. There's a little radio program on there I think you'll enjoy. Turns out that Fessenden did the world's first voice broadcast on Christmas Eve of 1906.
I knew I had heard of this.
Yep. He more or less went on, introduced himself. He played his violin. He played Christmas Carol on Christmas Eve. He also, I believe he did some reading from the Bible and said that he would be back on New Year's Eve, and I believe there was another broadcast on New Year's Eve. Now, this is the first time anyone had ever heard voice coming out of a radio before.
Wow.
He had built, I believe the story goes that he had built a transmitting tower, in Scotland or somewhere that was supposed to work for the test that he was going to do on this broadcast, but there was some problem, maybe the tower fell or something, I don't remember. But it ended up, his target was ships at sea, because those were the only guys that had radio receivers, and they were designed for receiving Morse code, and then could you imagine all of a sudden voice starts coming out of it? Pretty wild.
They probably, didn't quite know what to think about that.
Yeah. Anyway, there's a number of recreations of that broadcast. Of course, there's no
tape of it,
no real tape of it or wire recording or anything. It predated all of that. But there's a lot of different programs on the internet, but the particular one I'm pointing at, I really enjoyed. Thanks, Bill.
Cool. Thanks, Uncle Bill.
Yeah, awesome.
Tommy, you had a little something concerning code of some type, didn't you?
What about the code that the FCC's dropping? No more Morse code for amateur radio operators required. I finally have a good reason to go upgrade my license now.
Yeah, me too.
I'm actually studying right now to go take it at the Hamfest.
Cool.
I'm studying too to upgrade.
I'm studying too to upgrade to Amateur Extra. Not swearing I'll take mine, but I am studying.
Yeah. But in my opinion, I think it was a good thing. I've worked in the radio industry and television industry since 1972, and the Morse code was keeping me from upgrading. I didn't have time to spend on it.
I just didn't care to learn it.
Well, I didn't either.
It's not used as a viable means of communication any longer by any service. Well, I guess it shouldn't by any commercial service. I think the military does still have it as a standby, but like ships at sea were the last.
Yeah. Well, all the commercial services just were discontinued within like the last year. Didn't Western Union drop?
I think they were several years back. I think the last one were ships at sea, and they stopped like 96. Maybe it wasn't quite that long ago.
Yeah,
it's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a pretty good while.
Well, Tommy, tell us how to burn a Dodge.
Or dodge a burn.
Well, I had an email request from someone about using the dodge and burn tools in Photoshop. So, anyway, I thought I'd do this month's segment on that. And you'll see you kind of get the same results as we did when we tried to sandwich the two raw pictures together. But anyway, let's take a look at it and see what you think. Hi, I'm Tommy. Welcome to another episode of Photo Tips. For today's episode, we're going to go over something that came in from a viewer request. A viewer emailed, wanted to know how to use the dodge and burn features in Photoshop, or tools rather. Dodge and burn come from the old analog days, where you used to do things in the dark room. You had a piece of paper that you exposed with your negative by projecting the light through the enlarger, and to dodge, you would actually cut out a shape of paper or cardboard or something and put it on a piece of wire, and you pass it between the light and the paper at a high enough distance from the paper that will be out of focus, and you sort of move it to keep from having a sharp shadow edge. And what you're doing is actually allowing less light to expose the paper, so you actually have a lighter area of that image in that spot. And you would cut them out in different shapes to fit whatever you were trying to dodge. Burn is just the opposite. You would cut out a piece of paper and allow a certain area of your image to be exposed more. Photoshop will allow us to do essentially the same thing, although it's a lot easier, and if you don't do it right the first time, you can undo and redo it. We're going to get essentially the same effect we had when in a couple episodes ago, we used two images that were created from one raw file. One was exposed properly for highlights, one was exposed for the darker areas, and we merged them together and erased the part that we didn't want of one image and made one good image out of the two. That was 2 episodes ago. Let's take a look at the exact same sample, and let's see what we can do using the dodge and burn techniques with this one. Okay, you should recognize this image from the previous episode where we created 2 exposures with from a raw file, one exposed for the sky or the highlights, and one exposed for the midtones or dark areas of the image. And then we erased away, we sandwiched them together in layers and erased away the dark portion of the image to have an image that was exposed for the highlights and the dark areas. We're going to try to somewhat duplicate that using the dodge and burn tools. They're not really designed to do that. They're mostly designed to lighten or darken certain areas of the picture, like for instance the windows of the car here in the foreground. You could darken that and get some more detail, or if you wanted to say darken the street area and get a little more detail, you could run the burn tool over that and darken that a little bit. You can do the sky area, although it's not really designed for that. You'll end up with a smoky look because it uses a kind of a mid-gray color or tone to darken, and I'll show you a sample of that here in a moment. Let's start off down here with our dodge tool, and let's try to lighten up a portion of the image. Because this takes a little bit of time to go through, we'll just kind of work on the bottom portion of the image here. You can see it starting to bring out some detail in the dark areas. Let's work under this awning area and see if we can pull out some more information there. The first pass is relatively mild. If you let go of the mouse and then click it again, you'll get a lot more aggressive action the next time. We're using Photoshop elements like we usually do. It's Adobe Photoshop product. It's very similar to the full-blown version of Photoshop. Has a lot of functionality, but is very inexpensive to purchase a copy. And you can see we've got some good detail there. So let's go back and use the burn tool, and let's darken the windshield, the side window of this car, a little bit to even that out. And you can see that evens that up some. We'll darken this little area of the street just for fun. And it's starting to get a lot closer. Now I'm going to do a little piece of the sky up here and show you what I mean about the way it makes it look a little smoky. And it gives it a dull gray cast. It's not really recommended to do that. While it's a lot of work, you could use these tools and go through and doctor this image and make it look pretty much like we did when we sandwiched the two files that we created from the one raw, and get similar effect. But like I said, it's mainly to me it's mainly useful for lightening or darkening specific areas of the image to create a little bit more pleasing exposure, not for just mass image overhaul, I don't think, for large areas. If you were going to try to do this, you wouldn't want to. It would probably be preferable to create your image for the highlights or for the sky area, and then use the dodge tool to lighten up like the bricks or the dark areas of your image, because it's a lot easier to control that than it is to control the highlight areas, especially if they're vivid blue like our sky here. You'll end up, like I said, with dull gray, smoky look at the sky. Okay, as you can see, you get pretty much the same results as you did using the other technique. Some people prefer this because you get a little more control and you can do little minor areas. I think maybe even a blend of the two techniques, ultimately, if you have an image that needs a lot of work, would be ideal, because you can do the larger areas, and then if you have smaller areas in your image that you need to dodge or burn, to lighten or darken, use those tools to do that as well. You're only really limited by your creativity. As always, if you have any comments or questions, Martin at AmateurLogic.TV, and I'll be glad to answer them the best I can. If you have suggestions for upcoming episodes, please drop me a line at the same email address, Martin at AmateurLogic.TV, and we'll see what we can do about getting them in an upcoming episode.
Okay, Tommy, yeah, I see what you're talking about now. Very similar results from previous episode when you were using the layers and erasing away the darker parts.
Yeah, it's very similar. The dodge and burn tools are a lot better for doing smaller areas of the image. You can do a big area like I was showing in the episode, but it's really a lot better for doing little isolated sections.
You know, George, if we keep watching Tommy's photo tips, we're going to learn how to use Photoshop before it's over with.
Doggone, man. I'm
Can't have that.
I'm a Corel, whatever you want to call it.
Oh man, you're talking nasty now. I can't listen to that. That's bad.
Okay.
Jim, what's in the old email box there?
Well, we did go back and dig up a couple of emails that viewers sent in regarding my almost imitation of Fantastic Four Flame guy. What do you call him? Flame on? Johnny Flame? Anyway, hey, you guys put out a great show. This is from Kevin VA3KCV in Lancaster, Ontario. I liked the episode on part salvage. We call it parts recovery. Reminded me of my college days. I just never seen it done with an almost bored flare-up. So thanks, Kevin. Yeah.
By the way, Jim, have you used those parts in any projects? Were they any good?
I have not used them yet,
okay,
but I do still have them separately. And we also got one on the same topic from Mike, KL7R again, and he says, Jimmy, the episode 11 segment on parts recovery was pretty darn funny. Whoa, okay. Thanks, Mike. We didn't plan it that way, but he says, you are as hard-headed as I am. Just bang the darn board on the workbench.
Yeah.
He says, I can see why you might not want to be banging it on your kitchen table, but you shouldn't be running a blowtorch on the kitchen table anyway.
That's a good point.
That's good advice. I think we'll take it.
Well, you know, I was sitting around the shop thinking of a basic stamp project. It seems like it was just the other day.
Stephen says, hey guys, enjoyed the last episode, good as always. At some point in the show you mentioned something about a Parallax Microcontroller. I'm pretty interested in that, but was curious of the one you guys were working with. I went to the Parallax website, and there are a lot of expensive kits on there. I think you mentioned the particular kit you used was around $30.
Yeah, and this is the one that we were discussing. This is the Basic Stamp 2 OEM module, and I believe it's $30 on the web special. If you click on sale, you'll find it. You assemble this yourself. You solder the components onto the board, and this is a larger size of Basic Stamp 2 module, and there's also the standard Basic Stamp 2 module.
Yeah. It's as you can see, it's quite a bit smaller. It's about the size of 2 postage stamps.
Yeah, this one has all surface mount components on it, and they've mounted it on a little carrier board that you can just plug into an IC socket.
Yeah, for hobbyists, if you're not concerned with your size, the Basic Stamp 2 OEM one's a little preferable to me because it comes with the serial port already built on it.
Yeah, the reason they have 2 different modules here, this one is the standard one, the Basic Stamp 2 module, and the OEM module uses larger through-hole components. So if you were going to do your own design, you're probably going to be using through-hole components since they're much easier to work with than surface mount. And so Parallax offers this Basic Stamp 2 OEM module so you can actually work with these larger components, and it's easier to see how everything wires up than it would be with the small one.
Yeah. This, if you're going to use this one, there's a motherboard that this will actually install on that's got power connectors for your 9-volt supply, and there's got a piece of breadboard on it as well. Yeah,
this is, I believe this is called, well, I'm not sure what they call it, but this is one of the Basic Stamp carrier boards. It may be called the Board of Education. There's several different models, but yeah, here the module will just plug right in the chip socket here. You can put the components you're working in or with over on this side and the jumper wires and such. Put a 9-volt battery to it or hook a power supply, either one. And then there's this particular model has a USB port on it that you can plug into your computer to program the unit. Now there's a lot of different Basic Stamp modules. There's, I don't know how many different, probably 6 or 8 different ones. Here's another one right here. This is the Basic Stamp 2 P40. Now this one has more I/O pins on it. It has 32 I/O pins on it, so you can control twice as many things with it. Now, what kind of things would you want to control with this?
Well, you could pretty much control anything. They've got little servo motors that you can connect to them and turn things.
Yeah.
You can actually use it to sense closures or actuate a relay.
Make a great alarm circuit.
Yeah.
You can add other components to it. You can add A to D converters to it and then measure analog voltages with the unit. You can measure capacitance. I believe you can measure resistance. A lot of different things you can do with this little device.
Yeah. They've even got a network board that'll attach to it with a little miniature web server that you can control your devices or projects over the internet or even your local network.
Yeah, it's pretty slick.
Yeah, it's very slick.
Does email, FTP, HTTP, UDP, so you can do quite a lot of stuff with this little chip.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible.
And we were looking for a quick and easy project to do today, and we thought that this amateur radio Fox beacon project might be a good one. Basically, all this is a circuit that will key up a transmitter and then send a Morse code identification. And we're using the book Stamp 2 Communications and Control Projects. This is a great book. It's got a lot of amateur radio projects in it and other communications projects as well. The schematic for what we are building is right here. We're using a Basic Stamp 2 module. The serial port is already on the Basic Stamp 2 OEM module, so we don't have to put this on there. Instead of the relay that is used to key up the transmitter, we've inserted an LED here in that place so that you can see it light up to know that things are working. Here's the actual audio that's coming off out of the chip right here. And these P0 through P15, these are just input or output pins on the Basic Stamp 2 module. You can send a voltage out, retrieve a voltage, send or receive pulses, and that's basically what it's doing here. It's sending out a series of pulses. out this audio line here. This same line could have been used for controlling a relay or almost anything. Back to the circuit. Basically, we just put our voltage into the basic stamp, and you'll notice here they're showing 12 volts. Well, we're running 9 in it. And there's a 5-volt regulator on the module that brings it down to 5 volts. There's also a reset push button right here. This does the same thing as a reset button on your PC. You press it and the program just restarts. Here's the parts we're going to need for this project, our Basic Stamp 2 OEM module. And we'll just plug it into our experimenter board. We've got a push button switch that'll be the reset button. A couple of 0.1 microfarad capacitors, an LED, and a resistor to drop the voltage to the LED, a jumper wire, and a little pigtail for our power.
That LED's our rig.
Yes, this represents the transmitter. So we'll start by connecting the power, and in this case the ground is going to go to pin 2, and we're going to put our positive voltage in on pin 3. The reset switch connects between pin 4 on this Basic Stamp OEM module and ground, which will be the bottom bus here. Now let's make that ground, so we'll connect from our power supply ground a jumper lead down to this ground bus. Then our transmitter, which is actually an LED in this case, goes from pin 5 to ground. And we put our resistor in series with our ground lead. Then our audio coming out of the unit is going to be from pin number 6. So we'll plug a 0.1 microfarad capacitor in there into ground, as our schematic showed. And we'll also plug a 0.1 microfarad capacitor from there to an empty spot. Now, all that remains to be done is to connect the speaker, and it will connect from this end of the capacitor to ground. And the next step is to program the code into the unit. So we'll plug in the serial cable and we'll connect the power.
Let's take a look at the source here and see how easy it is to write software that runs on the Basic Stamp. If you've ever done any coding in the basic language, you'll be right at home in this. Even if you haven't, it's very easy and very readable. First of all, we've got 3 directives in the top of our source code. The first one tells us that we're using the Basic Stamp 2. The second one tells us we're using the 2.5 version of the compiler, and the third one tells us the COM port that the device is actually hooked up on this particular computer. We have some constants set up. The first one is the tone. We give it a value of 800. So we're going to create an 800 Hertz tone for our ID. We have the dit length, which is 100 milliseconds or 1/10 of a second. The dial length is 3/10 of a second. When we execute, we're going to go through and key our push to talk. So this go sub statement tells us to go down and run a block of code. This particular one is key PTT for key push to talk. It'll jump down here and execute the code. Right now we're going to raise line 0 to high, and that'll actually light our LED. If you had it hooked up to a radio, it would you would have a relay in your circuit, and it would actually actuate the relay and key your rig. We'll pause 3/10 of a second to give the transmitter time to key up and continue on. Next, we're going to display the first letter of our call sign in the debug window. Again, you'll see that shortly. We're going to go sub the dial routine. So we'll go down here, find our dial routine, and we'll create a frequency on pin 1 and it's going to be for the length of the dial 1 variable, which was 3/10 of a second or 300 milliseconds, and we're going to create it at 800 hertz. These are the constants that we set up previously. We're going to pause for 1/10 of a second and then return where we started from. So we just executed this line. The next one will be go sub dit. The only difference in it is really the duration. If you look at them, you'll see this one is 3/10. This is 1/10. We're going to pause again and then return. We do that for the entire character. We'll pause after this character is finished, and then we'll continue on to the next one. We'll go through and do the same thing all the way through the entire call sign. Then we're going to unkey the push to talk. So we'll jump down here and take line 0 back low, and that'll turn off our light or deactivate your relay. Next line, we'll pause for 15 seconds, clear the debug window, and then go to start. Obviously, in the real world, you wouldn't want to be IDing every 15 seconds, so you could change it to whatever value you want. We'll go back to start, do the whole thing all over again, and it'll run continuously like that until you remove power from it. To get this into the basic stamp, our stamps hooked up before, like I said, to COM1, and we're going to just click the run button, and you can see it downloaded into the stamp.
Once the code is downloaded, the program automatically starts running.
Amazing.
Isn't it? What did it say?
I don't know. I wonder if someone could email us in and let us know.
Okay. Yeah, any of you watching the screen, let us know what it says. You notice the LED's on while it's sending the code, and then it turns off afterwards. That's to unkey the transmitter that it simulates.
Yeah, it'd be very easy to interface that with your radio.
It would be, yeah. And so here you go. A repeater controller for roughly $30. A repeater IDer.
You might want to adjust your timing so it didn't ID every 15 seconds.
So tell me, what's going to be your first basic stamp project when you get back home?
Well, I'm not really sure. I think I'd like to do something with the internet module. That's pretty slick stuff.
It is.
Eventually, I'd like to do something we had discussed earlier and maybe try to figure out how to interface that thing with the rig or ham radio so we could control that remotely.
That would really be nice. And it ought to be possible because these little modules can talk several different serial protocols, and that's what they're using to control these rigs.
Yeah, definitely. If we get that worked out, I'm pretty sure you guys will see plenty of information on that.
Yeah. This slick project. Probably be a little while, though. I wouldn't be counting on that one next month.
Yeah. Well, as you can see, it's pretty easy to program the thing and actually interface different components with it. So,
yeah, I actually have a project that's using the internet module right now. I can't really discuss it, but it's slick. I mean, it does everything you need to do, and you'd never guess that you were, talking to a little module this size. You would think it was a regular web server.
Yeah, we should have a hack me contest and see who can hack the Basic Stamp web server sometime.
We'll have that one located at your house.
Be pretty cool. Let's see if we can crash it. So far, it hasn't crashed at all, has it?
No.
Never. Pretty rock solid stuff.
Pretty rock solid. Very few things go wrong.
Yeah.
Well, you guys really outdid yourself there. I like that. I like that pretty good. It's much better than my LED idea.
It's basically the same thing. We just swap the code around.
Yeah, you can hear yours.
Yeah. Well,
that'd make a good fox hunt idea.
I think that was the name of the project in the book.
Yeah, that's actually the project. We just kind of modified the project to suit our needs a little bit.
Yeah. I see.
Well, with the new year, the AmateurLogic.TV BitTorrents have disappeared. Tell us a little bit about that, Tommy.
Yeah, since my move up here, I've got less than a stable internet connection, and I've been running the BitTorrent tracker, and there had not quite as many users on there as there are direct downloads. So anyway, we decided to shut the torrents down. You can find the same downloads on the the show website, AmateurLogic.TV, and just use the download link and you'll find everything you need.
Yeah. And to those BitTorrent users, we're sorry. Wish we could do something else. But if you'd like to host them for us, give us a buzz.
Yeah, also, most BitTorrent clients will allow you to take RSS feeds from direct downloads too, so that might be a possibility for you as well.
Yeah. Okay,
well,
George?
Yeah, a little more internet news. The site dig.com.
Yep.
Everybody should be familiar with that one.
News site.
Oh, yeah.
Well, they've recently added a podcast section, and somebody posted us on there and all our various episodes and told us about it. And the day that I looked, we had 4 or 5 digs on there, and we wish the other 4 or 5 of you would go dig us too. Here's the address.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, go click it, Mom.
Yeah, thanks, Mom. Hey, George, before we forget about it, I wanted to ask you about your shirt.
Oh, my shirt. Yeah.
It looks like a red telephone and words, The Crisis.
Yeah, my son gave me this shirt for Christmas. If anybody's in the Houston, Texas area, go check out The Crisis.
Check it out
It's a rock and roll band that my son plays in. So best 3-piece in Texas. Well, if you don't count ZZ Top.
Maybe.
Okay, I was going to have to call you on that one until you straighten that out.
Yeah, I like that. Nice name. Nice T-shirt. I like that.
It's appropriate sometimes, too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Around here.
Okay, well, we don't want to forget to mention that as we draw near to this episode's close, our annual Hamfest coverage of the Jackson Metro Area Hamfest is coming up next episode.
Yeah, the Hamfest is, just a few weeks away.
That's right.
Of course, we're all going to be busy studying, for some license upgrades. But we're going to try not to let that interfere with our coverage too bad. And, we plan to do more of what we did last year. We had a lot of downloads on the various pieces of it. So
that's right.
We hope you enjoy it and look forward to bringing it to you next month.
Oh, yeah. I look forward to getting that nice shiny new ticket.
Yeah, me too.
Wow,
and you can tune in next episode after next. And if we don't mention anything about ham licenses in it, we won't be mentioning anything about it.
Yeah, if we don't mention it, you please don't mention it either, because it'll be a sore subject by that point.
That's right.
It means Tommy and I will still be talking on Echolink. But that is the hope that we'll be able to talk direct here within the next couple of months.
Yep.
So good deal. We've enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's getting close to the end of our material for episode 12. Gosh, even dozen now.
Wow, man. Yeah. Even the baker's dozen next month.
Yeah, time flies.
Okay, well, that's it. We hope you'll join us again next month.
See ya.
See you then. All you gotta do is rewind the film and run it backwards. Wow,
All right.
that was quick. Okay, let's
You
reverse
think
it
we
and we're
could?
done.